Hello everyone, this is Nurse B with Buzzing with the B. Today's buzz is about colorectal cancer screening. The title of this vlog is Colorectal Cancer, You Do Not Have to Get It. Colorectal cancer is a malignant or cancerous tumor found anywhere in the large intestines or colon. This does not include the anus. I want to briefly talk about the incidence of colorectal cancer in the world, United States, and African American. According to the World Cancer Research Fund, colorectal cancer is second in women and third in men as the most commonly diagnosed cancer in the world. The World Health Organization rates cancer as the leading cause of death worldwide and colorectal cancer as the second most common cancer cause of death. In the United States, colorectal cancer is the third most commonly diagnosed cancer and the second leading cause of cancer death. The good news is that the incidence of colorectal cancer has decreased significantly over the last 30 years in the United States, and the mortality rate has decreased 54%. That significant change in the colon cancer rate and mortality rate. Now, about 27% of the people aged 55 years or older may develop colorectal cancer. That is down significantly from 30 years ago. The bad news is that 11% of the people less than 55 years of age are now being diagnosed with colorectal cancer during the same time period. Even worse is that the diagnosis of colorectal cancer occurs 26% more frequently in African Americans, and the mortality rate is 40% more than in white non-Hispanic Americans. That's really a significant difference in the mortality rate. The other thing about Black Americans is that we are diagnosed in the advanced stages of the disease, and we develop cancer at an earlier age than white Americans. But there is some good news for Black Americans, African Americans. The colorectal cancer rate has decreased 6% since 2013 for African Americans. This has been attributed to colorectal cancer screening. As with every disease, there are risk factors that may predispose you to colorectal cancer. Some of those risk factors are non-modifiable, meaning you can't do anything about them, and others, you can do something about those. The non-modifiable risk factors are your age. Your risk for cancer grows for each decade of life over 50. Your family history, you cannot change the family you were born into. Genetics. If there has been someone in your family who has had cancer or is being treated for cancer at this point, you need to have a gene analysis done so that you can see if you have any mutations. And fourth, diseases that predispose you to developing colorectal cancer, such as irritable bowel syndrome, Crohn's disease. These are things you can't do anything about. When my husband was diagnosed with cancer, one of the first things we did was have a gene analysis, and it identified that he had a gene that mutated in the fifth decade of life. So that means my kids may have that gene. And that was important to me so that I can make sure my kids know what they need to do before they reach 50 to start looking for this disease. Now, let's talk about modifiable risk factors. And these are things you can do something about. These include excessive alcohol use, smoking, obesity, and a diet high in fat and low in fiber. Now, let's talk about measures you can take to prevent colon cancer. The first and most important measure is to have a colon polyps removed. That's it. If you have a polyp and you get it removed, that polyp cannot turn into cancer. Other things you can do is engage in physical activity to promote movement of waste products through the large intestines and out of your body. Look at your diet. Decrease the amount of fat and red meat in your diet. Increase the amount of fruit and vegetables and the amount of fiber in your diet. Then limit your alcohol intake. Since we know that colorectal screening is the most important factor for prevention of colorectal cancer, mainly removal of polyps, actively engage in colorectal screening when we turn 50 years of age, or for African Americans, that age is 45, or as recommended by the American Cancer Society. Of problems, your doctor can order a colorectal cancer screening at any age. So there are two general screening techniques that are used: the stool analysis and a visual examination of the colon. First, you start off with a stool analysis for occult blood. The doctor can either do that in the office, or they will give you a little packet to take home and to collect a stool sample and mail it back in. The second stool analysis is a stool DNA test. This is something that's fairly new. It wasn't around 5 years ago when my husband had colon cancer. This test tests for the presence of cancerous cells that was shed by a polyp or by a cancerous tumor in your colon. And it also checks for occult blood. Occult blood is invisible blood. You can't see it with your eye. It can only be identified in the lab. Now, this stool DNA test should be done every 3 years, and fecal occult blood analysis every year. If you test positive for occult blood, your doctor should strongly recommend that you have a colonoscopy. The next thing that need to be done, and this is the gold standard for colorectal screening, is a visual examination with either a flexible colonoscopy or a CT colonoscopy, and CT stands for computerized tomography, like a CT scan that's being used along with the colonoscopy. Some people are reluctant to get the colonoscopy because they might find it embarrassing. They're going to put you to sleep, so you won't know anything. Second is the cost of the examination. It's free. Under the Affordable Care Act, otherwise known as Obamacare, private insurance and Medicare are required to pay for a screening colonoscopy. There's no out-of-pocket expense for the colonoscopy or for the prep medications for the test. Along with the colonoscopy is one more important thing. It is knowledge of your family history as part of your colon cancer screening. You will need to look at your mother and your father's side of the family to see what diseases they have and at what age they had the disease. If someone had a colon cancer, then you need to start having colonoscopy 10 years before the age of the youngest person who was diagnosed in your family. After my husband was diagnosed with colon cancer, we did a history of his family, and I knew that his grandfather had had colon cancer. His mother's sister, his mother was diagnosed about a month before she died, and then his brother, who was around 52 years of age. So the doctors at MD Anderson decided that my children need to have a colonoscopy at least 10 years prior to the 52-year mark that we knew of. My husband was 56 years of age when he was diagnosed. Therefore, the doctors at MD Anderson Cancer Center recommend that my children have their first colonoscopy at 40 years of age. This is why it's so important to know your family history, so that you can share that information with your family members and with your doctor, so everyone will know that you need to start having a colonoscopy at an earlier age than 50 years of age. When people are diagnosed with cancer, their cancer is staged to look at their survival rate, projected survival rate. So when we look at colon cancer, we're going to look at whether the cancer has spread through the 3 layers of the colon and beyond the colon into peritoneal cavity, and then to the lymph nodes or to distant organs. So for people diagnosed in the earliest stage of colon cancer, that is a localized cancer, meaning that it is confined to the colon itself. That survival rate is 91%. 91% survival rate, 5-year survival rate. People whose cancer has spread to the regional area, which includes the layers, all 3 layers of the colon into the peritoneal cavity, and possibly into 1 to 4 lymph nodes, have a 63% survival rate. A 63% 5-year survival rate. That's still pretty good. Unfortunately, stage 4 has such a significant drop in the survival rate, which is meaning distant metastasis. That survival rate is only 16%. When my husband was diagnosed, he was diagnosed in stage 4B, and his survival rate was 16%. Most people diagnosed with stage 4 colorectal cancer will die within 6 months. My husband lived for 3 years before it resurfaced, and once it resurfaced, he lived only about 2 months at that point. So it's so important that you get diagnosed early. As you can see, there is such a significant difference in the survival rate between regional confinement and distant metastasis. Usually, people do not demonstrate symptoms until they're in the advanced stages of the cancer, which would be late in that regional, probably like stage 3B. The symptoms of colorectal cancers include change in your bowel habits, diarrhea or constipation, or changes in the consistency of your stool, meaning that the stool might be flat because it's having to go past that tumor that is really large and it's flattening it out. Rectal bleeding, persistent abdominal pain, a feeling of incomplete emptying of your bowels, weakness or fatigue, and unexplained weight loss. You can't wait until you have symptoms. You need to have that colonoscopy done as early as possible, depending on your age and your family history. You do not, N-O-T, have to get colorectal cancer. Get a colonoscopy. It will save your life. If you would like to follow me, press the subscribe button that's listed below, and you will gain access to all of my videos. Also, you can press the like, share, and subscribe icon that's floating on my video to share it with your friends. I want to thank you in advance for viewing these videos that I will post. I want to thank you in advance for viewing the videos that I will post about Black men's health. I look forward to communicating with you about these topics. Have a great day.